The water was the world now. It had been for years. Elias couldn't remember the exact date the last of the dams broke, only the final, terrifying rush that had swallowed Louisville whole, turning the Kentucky landscape into a vast, murky ocean dotted with concrete tombstones. The dead, the shambling ones, were still a problem, but a contained one. They were prisoners on their islands of decay, trapped on the upper floors of skyscrapers that jutted from the water like skeletal fingers. For Elias, the water was life. His home, a sprawling floating platform he simply called the raft, was a testament to years of desperate scavenging and meticulous engineering. It wasn't pretty. It was a Frankenstein's monster of salvaged pontoons, wooden planks bolted to steel girders, and sections of hollowed-out shipping containers. A small, fenced-in garden grew mutated-looking, but edible vegetables in soil hauled sack by painful sack from the high ground of Iroquois Park, one of the few places that had remained an island. A jury-rigged wind turbine, and a bank of solar panels hummed a constant, reassuring tune, powering his water purifiers, lights, and the electric fence that surrounded the perimeter, a precaution against the rare, bloated floaters that sometimes bumped against the hull. The raft was anchored by 3 massive, custom-forged grapnels, their chains delving deep into the submerged rubble of what was once a suburban street. It was his fortress, his sanctuary. But a fortress was useless without the means to leave it. And that was the problem. The heart of his supply vessel, a battered aluminum John boat he had christened the Bastard, was sputtering. The engine, a salvaged V6 from a half-drowned pickup truck, coughed and wheezed like a dying man. Its armor, plates of scrap metal, welded haphazardly to the hull, had taken a brutal beating during his last run to the Kenai Railroad bridge. A collision with a submerged shipping container had left a deep, worrying gouge just above the waterline. "Can't put it off any longer," he muttered to himself, his voice a rough, unused thing in the quiet morning. His breath plumed in the chill air. He stood on the deck of the Bastard, running a calloused hand over the damaged hull. He needed a new MIG welder. His was shot, the transformer fried. And he knew the only place likely to have one was a Scientist facility, a massive industrial building on the south side of what used to be the city. It was a tall one, meaning its upper floors would be dry. Meaning it would be infested. The preparations took the rest of the day. He siphoned gasoline from his reserve tanks into the Bastard's fuel cell, checked the integrity of the propeller guard, a steel cage designed to chew through debris and the occasional waterlogged corpse, and sharpened his primary weapon, a long-handled fire axe. His backpack was loaded with essentials, purified water, canned beans, a pry bar, flares, and a small sledgehammer. Everything had its place, its weight calculated. In this world, inefficiency was a death sentence. The next dawn broke, painting the polluted water in shades of orange and pink. Elias pulled the heavy chains of 2 anchors, the grapnels groaning as they released their grip on the sunken world below. He left one anchor down, a tether to home. Firing up the V6, he winced at the rattling protest, but pushed the throttle forward. The Bastard carved a wake through the still water, leaving the raft shrinking in the distance, a lonely speck of order in a universe of chaos. The journey was a tour of a dead civilization. The twin spires of a downtown church broke the surface, their crosses tilted as if in prayer for the drowned city. He navigated by the tops of skyscrapers, the familiar skyline now a treacherous set of landmarks. The water was a minefield of submerged cars, floating debris, and the ever-present risk of snags. 2 hours later, the Scientist building loomed. It was a vast, beige block, its lower 2/3 stained dark with watermarks. A flock of crows circled its roof, silent sentinels. Elias cut the engine, letting the boat drift the last 50 yards. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the gentle lapping of water against the hull, and a faint, rhythmic thump. 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 Coming from inside the building. He nudged the Bastard against a collapsed section of the outer wall, where a concrete loading dock had given way, creating a ramp. He threw a grappling hook, the claw biting into a window frame 3 stories up, and secured the line. The thumping was louder now. It was the sound of a zombie, or maybe several, patiently bumping against a locked door. Axe in hand, he scrambled up the debris. The air inside was thick with the stench of mildew and rot. He was on the 3rd floor, a massive, open-plan office space. Desks and chairs were overturned, covered in a fine layer of grime. Through the murky windows, he could see the endless expanse of water outside. It was like being in a submarine with a view. The thumping led him to a stairwell door. He pressed his ear against the cold metal. A low moan, a scraping sound. At least a few. He bypassed it, opting for the emergency stairs at the far end of the floor. He had to get to the maintenance and storage section, which, according to the fated floor plan near the elevators, was on the 5th floor. The climb was agonizingly tense. Every creak of the metal stairs, every dislodged pebble, sounded like a gunshot in the oppressive silence. On the 4th floor, he peered through the stairwell window. A small horde shuffled aimlessly in the hallway, drawn to the light. He backed away slowly, his heart hammering in his chest. The 5th floor was darker, quieter. This was it. Storage cages lined the walls, filled with uniforms, cleaning supplies, and equipment. He used the pry bar on the first cage, the screech of metal echoing horribly. He froze, listening. Nothing. He worked faster, his eyes scanning the shadows. He found boxes of tools, spare parts, but no welder. Cage after cage, the same result. His frustration grew, mingling with the fear. Just as he was about to give up on the section, he saw it. In the last cage, tucked behind a stack of floor buffers, was a heavy-duty Miller welder, still in its box. Hope surged through him, hot and sharp. The lock was thick, industrial grade. The pry bar was useless. "Okay, big fella," he whispered to the sledgehammer in his pack. He took it out, its weight familiar and comforting. The first strike was deafening. The shriek of tortured metal was immediately answered by a chorus of guttural moans from the floor below and from deeper within his own level. Strike 2. The lock bent. The moans turned to frantic shuffling, the thumping against the stairwell door intensifying. Strike 3. The hasp snapped. The cage door swung open. He grabbed the heavy box, grunting with the effort, and hefted it onto his shoulder. The noise was a dinner bell, and he was the meal. He didn't bother with stealth now. He sprinted back to the emergency stairs, the box bouncing painfully on his shoulder. The horde from the 4th floor was already clawing its way up, a tangle of limbs and snapping teeth. He didn't have time to go down. He went up. He burst onto the roof, gasping in the open air. The crows scattered, cawing in protest. He ran to the edge, directly above where he had moored the bastard. The zombies were spilling onto the roof behind him, their groans a promise of a final, gruesome end. He didn't hesitate. He shoved the box over the edge, watching it plummet and land with a mighty crash on the reinforced deck of his boat. Then, with the first of the dead, just feet away, he took a running leap, grabbing the dangling rope of his grappling hook. He slid down, the coarse rope tearing at his gloves, and landed hard on his feet next to the welder. He scrambled to the stern, yanking the starter cord. The engine sputtered, coughed black smoke, and then roared to life with a defiant bellow. He slammed the boat into reverse, the propeller churning water, as he unhooked the grappling line. The bastard pulled away from the building just as a zombie lunged from the loading dock, falling short and disappearing into the water, with a splash. He didn't look back. He pointed the bow towards the distant, hazy shape of his raft and pushed the throttle to its limit. The journey home was a blur of adrenaline and relief. As the sun began to set, casting long, dark shadows across the water, the familiar silhouette of his home grew larger. His fortress. His world. He cut the engine and glided the last few feet, securing the bastard to its mooring. He stood for a long moment on the deck, the heavy box of the welder at his feet, and looked out at his creation. The lights on the raft flickered on, powered by the wind and the sun, a tiny island of human ingenuity in an ocean of apocalypse. He was tired. He was sore. He was alone. But as he lugged his prize across the gangplank and onto the solid, stable platform of his home, he felt a profound sense of victory. The water could rise, the dead could hunger, and the world could crumble, but here, on the raft, with the bastard at his command, he wasn't just surviving. He was building. He was enduring. And in a world that had ended, that was everything.